I still remember those mysterious whispers, those covert smiles he thought I was oblivious to. His sudden and secret so-called cabin trips with the boys were more frequent and enigmatic. For a long time, trust was a bridge we both built, and I never thought he would be the one to burn it. The day I decided to surprise him, the shock was mine to embrace, and the scene before me was anything but anticipated. In this narration, I share a transformative journey from being a deceived spouse to discovering strength and resilience I never knew resided within me. This story is not just a tale of betrayal and revenge, but it's about metamorphosis, redemption, learning to love oneself, and finding strength in the darkest of times. But remember, it's not just a tale of revenge, it's a story that transcends beyond the usual norms, breaking the stereotypes of vengeance and reaching a state of liberation, acceptance, and empowerment. My name is Camilla, and this is my story. So there I was, casually sipping my morning coffee, browsing through old photos of us, hubby and me, laughing, kissing, being the embodiment of a picture-perfect marriage. It had been 5 blissful years, but something was off lately. Every few weekends, my husband would gather his bags and vanish into the wilderness with his gang of friends, or the boys, as he affectionately called them, leaving me to wonder what mysterious adventures they were off to. His tales of these secretive escapades were riddled with inconsistencies. He'd say they were fishing, but there would be no pictures of fish. He'd say they were camping, but there'd be no photos of tents. Must be a guy thing, I would say to myself, pushing aside the nagging doubt and the nagging feeling that something was amiss. Curiosity is a potent brew, and eventually I caved. I decided to surprise him on one of his secret cabin trips. My heart raced with anticipation as I drove through winding roads surrounded by dense whispering trees to the secluded cabin where they supposedly hung out. I hope he's happy to see me, I muttered to myself, my hands clammy on the wheel. As I reached the sight before me made my heart sink into my stomach. There was my husband, but there were no boys. Instead, there she was, a woman, her laughter harmonizing with his in a symphony of betrayal. Rage bubbled inside me as I watched them, unseen. But rather than confront them, an idea hatched inside my head, a spectacular, dramatic, grandiose display of revenge seasoned with a sprinkling of public humiliation. I started my meticulous plan by gathering evidence. I clicked photographs, collected voice recordings, snippets of their stolen moments together. Each piece of evidence was a sharp sting, a reminder of the facade of my marriage. I kept telling myself, focus, this is for the grand revelation. This will be worth it. With all the evidence I needed, it was time to set the stage. I decided to throw a grand party, a soiree to celebrate love and commitment. My invitations were extended to all our friends, family, and acquaintances, and there was a peculiar emphasis on the boys to make sure they attend. My heart pounded as I prepared, knowing that the mask of perfection would soon be shattered. To my delight, the party was buzzing. The air was saturated with laughter and chatter, everyone blissfully ignorant of the drama that was about to unfold. My husband, basking in the love and attention showered upon him, was completely oblivious to the storm brewing around him. With every passing second, my heart raced, but I kept my composure. I smiled, I laughed, I played the gracious host, waiting for the perfect moment to drop my bombshell. And then it arrived, the moment when everyone was gathered, their attention fixated on us as we were about to make a toast. I raised my glass high, my voice steady, to love and to the beautiful secrets it holds. With a smirk, I started the projection. The room fell into stunned silence as images flashed across the screen, the laughter and whispers of stolen moments echoing around the room. The air was charged with shock, betrayal, and whispered accusations. I watched as the color drained from my husband's face, his eyes darting around, looking for an escape from the web of his own making. The room was a battlefield, and I was the lone warrior standing tall amidst the ruins of my marriage. Victorious yet broken, I had pulled off my grand revenge. The public humiliation etched on his face was the trophy I hadn't known I wanted. But there was no joy in this victory, only the cold, empty realization that the man I had loved was never truly mine. And while the whispers and the stares surrounded me, the only sound that echoed in my mind was the shattering of my own heart. Fallout from my dramatic revelation was like a slow burning fire consuming everything in its path. My husband, or should I say soon-to-be ex-husband, was now the subject of hushed whispers and furtive glances, his reputation in tatters. The next day, he tried to approach me, his eyes swollen, probably from remorse or perhaps just from being caught. "Please, can we talk about this?" he pleaded, his voice a fragile whisper. "I have nothing to say to you," I replied coldly, my heart stone against his pleas, but my mind was a whirlwind of emotions, torn between the remnants of love and the fresh wounds of betrayal. Every fiber of my being screamed to run away, to escape the ruins of my once happy life. But no, I wasn't done. The dramatic revelation was just the appetizer. The main course of revenge was still being served. In my pursuit of revenge, I found unlikely allies. Boys feeling betrayed themselves were more than willing to assist me in my mission. We colluded, planned, and executed meticulous schemes to expose his lies further, to tarnish his image and isolate him from everyone who once admired him. We worked in shadows, our moves calculated, our intentions clear. Our little revenge squad was a ticking time bomb, and it exploded, revealing more secrets, more betrayals. It seemed my husband had created a labyrinth of lies, a maze so complex that even he was lost in it. The more I discovered, the more my heart hardened. The slivers of love that remained were now turning into shards of hate. And then there was her, the other woman, the partner in his deceit. My anger towards her was a raging inferno, but I also saw her as a pawn in his twisted game, another victim of his lies. I approached her, my intentions unclear even to myself. Was it to confront her, to understand her, or to simply see the face of the woman who had stolen my husband's heart? Her eyes met mine, a flicker of guilt passing through them before being replaced by defiance. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice laced with a mixture of fear and defiance. "I want to know why," was all I could muster, my voice a mere whisper, the pain and anger battling within me. She too had been a puppet in his game, unaware of his marital status, fed lies coated in sweet words. It became clear that in his quest for thrill and adventure, he had played us both, leaving a trail of broken hearts in his wake. The revelation sparked a strange camaraderie between us, two broken souls united by betrayal. We exchanged stories, tears, and mutual regrets, the pain forging an unspoken bond between us. It was a connection neither of us had sought, but there we were, confiding, understanding, healing. As I listened to her, my rage simmered into a cold, calculated resolve. This was not just my battle anymore. It was our battle, a war against deceit and betrayal. We became partners in revenge, planning the final act of this drama, the grand finale where he would be stripped of his masks, his true face revealed to the world. As the day of reckoning approached, my newfound ally and I met in secret, refining our plan and sharing our vulnerabilities. Our bond was strange, but it was real, forged in the fires of betrayal. We were two wounded warriors fighting a common enemy, our pain our strongest weapon. Finally, the day arrived. The stage was set, and all the actors were in their places. The air was thick with tension, charged with anticipation. I felt a kaleidoscope of emotions as I prepared to face him, my stomach in knots, my heart racing. This is it, the moment of truth. I said to myself, steadying my breath, preparing for the storm ahead. We had planned a public confrontation, a spectacular showdown where all his lies would be laid bare, his charade exposed. We had invited friends, family, colleagues, anyone who had known him, respected him. It was to be a court of public opinion, a platform where his true self would be revealed. He walked in unsuspecting, his usual charm in place, his smile radiating confidence. He had no idea that his fortress of lies was about to crumble, his empire of deceit about to fall. My heart hammered in my chest as he approached, his eyes searching mine, a flicker of curiosity in them. "What is all this?" he asked, the innocence in his voice almost convincing. And then the storm broke, a torrent of accusations, revelations, and confessions pouring down on him. His face changed, the mask slipping, revealing the man behind it, the real him. The room was a battlefield, his defenders fighting a losing battle, the truth slicing through their defenses, exposing the rot within. His eyes darted around, looking for an escape, a way out of this nightmare, but there was none. The walls were closing in, his past catching up to him. The air was electric, the tension palpable, the silence broken only by the whispers of shock and disbelief. It was a spectacle, a display of his true self, each layer peeled back, revealing the man he really was, his charm, his charisma, all stripped away, leaving behind a broken, defeated man. The room was a sea of faces, each one a mirror reflecting his betrayal, his deceit. I watched him, my heart a mix of satisfaction and sorrow, the final act playing out before my eyes. I had dreamed of this moment, longed for it, the sweet taste of revenge on my lips. But as I saw him there, broken, lost, a part of me mourned the man I had loved, the man I had thought he was. He tried to speak, to defend himself, to explain, but his words were empty, his voice a hollow echo. The truth was out, the mask shattered, and all that remained was the man, the real man, exposed and vulnerable. His eyes met mine, a plea in them, a silent request for forgiveness, understanding, but it was too late. The damage was done, and all that remained was the ruins of a life, a love destroyed by his own hands. The confrontation was a catharsis, a release of all the pain, the anger, the betrayal. It was a cleansing, a purification, the truth washing away the stains of his lies. And as the dust settled, as the echoes of the confrontation faded, I felt a sense of peace, a calmness I hadn't felt in a long time. As I walked away from the ruins of my past, a sense of freedom enveloped me, a lightness in my step. I had fought the battle, won the war, and now the future was mine to shape, to mold. The pain was still there, the scars still fresh, but I was healing, growing, evolving. I looked back one last time at the man I had loved, the man I had lost. He was a shadow, a ghost of his former self. His world crumbled, his life in shambles. It was a painful sight, a reminder of what could have been, what should have been, but it was also a symbol of my strength, my resilience, my ability to rise from the ashes, to rebuild, to renew. And with a final glance, a final goodbye, I turned away, leaving the past behind, stepping into the future, a future of possibilities, of hope, of new beginnings. The aftermath of the confrontation was a maelstrom of emotions, a tempest of pain and relief, regret and vindication. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, but the echo of betrayal still reverberated in the back of my mind. "You've done it. You've exposed him," I said to myself, trying to grasp the enormity of what had just transpired. He was now the talk of the town, whispers of his deceitful exploits permeating through every social circle. His name was synonymous with betrayal, his image tarnished beyond repair. It was the bitter fruit of his deception, a consequence of his actions, and it tasted oh so sweet to my revenge-fueled heart. Our shared acquaintances were divided, some siding with him, ensnared in his web of charming lies, while others extended their sympathy to me, their eyes newly opened to his true colors. He was a war of opinions, a battlefield of conflicting loyalties, and I was at its center, a symbol of his deceit and downfall. The other woman, once my opponent, now my ally, also began her journey of healing. Our bond, though born of pain and betrayal, had become a beacon of support and understanding, a shared experience that only we could truly comprehend. We were the wounded survivors of his emotional onslaught, and together we started to rebuild our broken selves. During this turbulent time, my newfound strength became my guiding light, my compass through the storm. I immersed myself in activities that brought me joy, surrounded myself with people who loved and supported me. This is your time, your moment to rediscover yourself. I constantly reminded myself. Every day was a battle, a struggle to move past the pain, to let go of the bitterness. There were moments of weakness, moments where the shadows of the past threatened to engulf me, but I fought back, clung to the light, to the hope of a better tomorrow. The path was rocky, the journey long, but I persevered, my resolve unbroken. I indulged in self-care, explored new hobbies, met new people, opened my heart to new experiences. I learned to love myself, to value my worth, to see beyond the scars, beyond the pain. It was a journey of self-discovery, of growth, of transformation. I was a phoenix rising from the ashes, reborn in the fire of my trials. However, the shadow of him lingered, a ghost haunting my steps, his memory a constant reminder of the pain, the betrayal. But with each passing day, the shadow grew fainter, the pain less sharp, the memories less vivid. I was healing, slowly, gradually, the wounds closing, the scars fading. In my journey of rebirth, I also learned the power of forgiveness, the strength in letting go. I realized that harboring the bitterness, the anger, was only poisoning my soul, chaining me to the past, to him. To truly be free, to truly move on, you must forgive, a wise friend advised me. It was not easy to release the anger, to let go of the resentment. It was a battle, a struggle within myself, but I fought it. I conquered it. I learned to forgive, not for him, but for me, to free myself from the chains of the past, to cleanse my soul from the toxins of bitterness. It was a release, a liberation, a breath of fresh air. Forgiving him was my final act of revenge, my ultimate victory. It was my way of taking back my power, my control, my life. It was my declaration of independence, my proclamation of freedom. I was no longer his victim, no longer his prisoner. I was free, free to live, to love, to be me. In this newfound freedom, in this rebirth, I found my true self, my authentic self. I learned to embrace my flaws, to celebrate my uniqueness, to love myself unconditionally. I discovered my worth, my value, my essence. I was me, unapologetically, proudly, freely. And as I walked this path of self-discovery, of healing, of growth, I realized that this journey, this experience had shaped me, molded me into the person I was meant to be. It was a painful lesson, a harsh reality. It was my truth, my story, and I owned it, embraced it, learned from it. In this climactic juncture of my life, where forgiveness had paved the road to my emancipation from pain and I was evolving every day, I also had a revelation. What if my true revenge is not just unearthing his deceitful endeavors, but also blooming in the ruins he left me in? I thought, a newfound purpose illuminating my path. I decided to convert my sufferings, my experiences, into stepping stones to help others going through the same agony. It was time to turn the tables, time to metamorphose my pain into power, my sufferings into solace for others. My journey found a voice in the form of a support group where broken hearts met to share, to heal, and to find strength and unity. It was a sanctuary of broken souls, a haven where wounded hearts found solace, understanding, and hope. Every story shared was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that we were not alone in our pain. Here, amidst tears and laughter, pain and hope, I saw the transformative power of shared experiences, of mutual support, of unconditional love. It was a magical experience, a healing journey, a rediscovery of self-worth, and I was humbled to be a part of it. Every session was a step closer to healing, a move towards self-discovery, a journey towards self-love. It was an emotional roller coaster, a symphony of pain and hope, sorrow and joy, and it was beautiful. I was witnessing the metamorphosis of broken spirits, the rebirth of lost souls, the rediscovery of buried self-love. However, my journey was not without its challenges, its setbacks. There were moments of weakness, of doubt, of despair. There were times when the shadows of the past threatened to engulf me, to pull me back into the abyss of pain. But I fought, I persevered, I overcame. Every challenge faced was a victory won, every setback overcome was a step forward. I am not defined by my past, by his betrayal. I am defined by my strength, by my resilience, by my ability to rise above the pain. I reminded myself during those trying times, it was my mantra, my shield against the shadows, my beacon in the darkness. In this journey of self-discovery, of healing, of transformation, I also found love not in another, but in myself. I learned to appreciate my worth, to celebrate my uniqueness, to embrace my flaws. I discovered the beauty in self-love, the power in self-acceptance, the freedom in self-expression. I was not searching for someone to complete me, to fix me, to save me. I was complete, whole, beautiful in my imperfection. I was my savior, my hero, my love. I was enough. In the end, my revenge was not just exposing his deceit, not just surviving his betrayal, but thriving despite it. It was about transforming my pain into power, my suffering into strength, my tears into pearls of wisdom. It was about rising from the ashes, soaring above the pain, embracing my true self. And there he was, shackled by the chains of his deceit, imprisoned in the web of his lies, a prisoner of his own making. He had lost everything, his reputation, his friends, his love, while I had gained everything, my self-worth, my strength, my freedom. My true revenge was my transformation, my evolution, my liberation. It was the realization of my worth, the acceptance of my flaws, the celebration of my uniqueness. It was my journey from victim to survivor, from survivor to warrior, from warrior to victor. In conclusion, revenge is not about causing pain. It's about reclaiming your power. It's not about dwelling in the past. It's about building your future. It's not about him. It's about you.
During a seemingly innocuous family dinner, the conversation flowed as usual. My husband Todd discussing his work at the insurance firm, our teenage son Aaron rambling about his latest video game obsession. That's when I noticed Todd's demeanor shift, his eyes darting furtively as he excused himself from the table, whispering into his phone in the hallway. "Sarah, I promise, we'll start fresh soon. Just be patient a little longer." My heart pounded in my chest as the weight of his words sank in. "Sarah?" A chill ran down my spine as Todd returned, his expression carefully composed, as if nothing had transpired. Doubts resurfaced. The late nights at the office, the unexplained charges on our credit cards. I had suppressed them, convincing myself that his dedication to providing for our family was paramount. That night, as Todd slept soundly beside me, my mind raced, dissecting every interaction, every half-truth that had once seemed innocuous. How could the man I had sacrificed so much for, the one for whom I had put my own career aspirations on hold, betray me in this way? The following morning, I feigned normalcy, my accountant's mind already formulating a plan. If Todd thought he could deceive me, the woman who had meticulously managed our finances for decades, he was sorely mistaken. I would unravel this web of lies, one thread at a time. Poring over our banking statements, I noticed suspicious patterns, lavish purchases, withdrawals, and transfers that defied explanation. Each discrepancy fueled my determination, hardening my resolve to expose the truth, no matter how painful. As the days passed, my investigation intensified. I scoured credit card statements, cross-referenced receipts, and flagged every anomaly. The evidence mounted, and with it my sense of betrayal deepened. One evening, while Todd was supposedly working late, I followed a lead to an upscale apartment complex. There, in the dimly lit parking lot, I caught a glimpse of him embracing a younger woman, their bodies intertwined in a passionate kiss. My heart shattered as the realization hit me. My husband, the man I had devoted my life to, had been living a lie. The evidence of Todd's betrayal lay scattered across my office desk. Bank statements, credit card receipts, all pointing to a hidden life he had so carefully concealed. As an accountant, I prided myself on my meticulous attention to detail, but even I had been blind to the glaring discrepancies in our finances. "What's all this?" Todd's voice startled me as he entered the room, his brow furrowed in confusion. I straightened my back, marshalling every ounce of courage. "Care to explain these charges at the Grand Lux Hotel, or the monthly payments to an apartment downtown?" Todd's face paled as he glanced at the incriminating paperwork. "Marlene, it's not what you think. Don't insult my intelligence," I spat, fury coursing through my veins. "I know about Sarah. I saw you with her." A heavy silence hung in the air as Todd struggled to formulate a response. Finally, he exhaled deeply, his shoulders sagging in resignation. "I never meant to hurt you. It just happened." "It just happened?" I echoed incredulously. "You've been living a double life, betraying me and our family with your lies and infidelity." Todd's eyes pleaded with me, but I had no sympathy left to offer. "I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we can work through this, I swear." I let out a bitter laugh. "Work through this? After you squandered our hard-earned savings on your mistress, lavished her with gifts while I scrimped and saved to make ends meet?" Rage contorted his features as he lashed out. "You think it was easy, living with a woman so consumed by her work, always crunching numbers, never having time for me?" His words stung, but I refused to let him shift the blame. "That's no excuse for what you've done. I sacrificed my own ambitions to support your career, and this is how you repay me?" Todd's head dropped, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I'm sorry, Marlene. I've made a mess of everything." "Sorry doesn't cut it," I said coldly, gathering the damning evidence. "Not anymore." As I brushed past him, our eyes met briefly, and in that moment, I saw the depth of his regret. But it was too little, too late. The man I had loved, the one I had trusted implicitly, was nothing more than a stranger cloaked in deceit. I knew then that there was no turning back. The scales had fallen from my eyes, and I would stop at nothing to regain what was rightfully mine: my dignity, my independence, and my future. In the days following my confrontation with Todd, a heavy pall hung over our once happy home. The warmth and laughter that had once filled its walls were now replaced by a suffocating silence, punctuated only by the occasional heated exchange. "I want a divorce," I stated flatly one evening, my hands trembling with a mixture of fear and resolve. Todd's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't be serious, Marlene, after everything we've been through?" "You did this?" I shot back, gesturing to the emptiness that now surrounded us. "Your lies, your betrayal, they destroyed our marriage." He shook his head vehemently. "We can work it out. I'll do anything. Just don't throw away our family like this." But his pleas fell on deaf ears. The damage had been done, and the trust that had once bound us together lay in tatters. I knew, deep down, that there was no salvaging what remained of our broken union. Steeling my nerves, I contacted a divorce lawyer, a formidable woman named Rachel, who promised to fight for my fair share. As we pored over the financial records, a clearer picture of Todd's deception emerged. Lavish gifts, exotic vacations, all funded by our hard-earned savings. "He treated her like a queen while I struggled to make ends meet," I confided in Rachel, my voice thick with emotion. Her eyes narrowed with determination. "We'll make sure he pays for every penny, Marlene. This is just the beginning." True to her word, Rachel guided me through the labyrinth of legal proceedings, ensuring that every asset, every hidden account was laid bare. With each revelation, I felt a twisted sense of vindication, knowing that Todd's carefully constructed facade was crumbling around him. Yet, even as the evidence mounted, a part of me still clung to the memories of the man I had once loved. The charming, devoted husband who had promised to cherish me forever. How could someone I had trusted so implicitly have become such a stranger? In my darkest moments, I found solace in the company of my closest friend Jenna. Over countless cups of coffee, she listened patiently as I poured out my pain, my anger, and my doubts. "You're doing the right thing, Marlene," she would reassure me, her warm embrace offering a brief respite from the storm that raged within. "He doesn't deserve your loyalty after what he's done." Her words, though harsh, rang true. Todd had shattered the sacred vows that had once bound us, and there was no turning back. As the divorce proceedings gained momentum, I could feel the weight of his betrayal slowly lifting from my shoulders, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. I would emerge from this ordeal stronger, wiser, and above all, unbroken. The road ahead might be long and uncertain, but I knew that with each step I was reclaiming the life that had once been so callously stolen from me. As the days turned into weeks, the weight of Todd's betrayal seemed to bear down on me more heavily with each passing moment. Despite the support of my dear friend Jenna, I found myself drowning in a sea of doubt and anger, struggling to make sense of the life I had once known. It was during one of our coffee dates that Jenna broached a subject I had been too afraid to confront. "Have you considered hiring a private investigator?" she asked gently, her eyes filled with concern. I recoiled at the suggestion, my mind immediately conjuring up images of seedy detectives and sordid affairs laid bare. "I'm not sure I want to know any more than I already do." Jenna reached across the table, her warm hand enveloping mine. "Marlene, you deserve the truth, all of it. Isn't it better to have the facts than to be haunted by uncertainty?" Her words struck a chord, and I knew she was right. As painful as it might be, I needed to uncover the full extent of Todd's betrayal, to finally shed light on the secrets he had kept hidden for so long. With Jenna's help, I tracked down a reputable private investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Samantha, who promised to handle my case with discretion and professionalism. "Just tell me what you need, and I'll get to the bottom of it," she assured me during our initial consultation. I steeled myself, listing off the details I had uncovered: the mysterious apartment, the unexplained charges, and the elusive woman named Sarah. Samantha nodded, her keen eyes taking in every detail. "Leave it to me," she said with a confident nod. True to her word, within a matter of days, Samantha had unearthed a trove of damning evidence. Surveillance photos captured Todd's clandestine meetings with a woman identified as Clarice, a younger, stunning brunette who appeared to be his mistress. "He's been lavishing her with gifts, jewelry, designer clothes, all paid for with your money," Samantha reported grimly, sliding a stack of incriminating receipts across the table. As I pored over the evidence, my hands trembled with a potent mix of rage and heartbreak. This Clarice was no mere fling. Todd had been leading an entire double life, one funded by the very savings I had worked so tirelessly to build. "That bastard," I spat, hot tears of anger stinging my eyes. "He's going to pay for every single lie." Samantha's expression hardened with determination. "We'll make sure of it. This is just the beginning." With the truth laid bare before me, I felt a newfound sense of resolve coursing through my veins. No longer would I be the naive, trusting wife, blindly following the path laid out for me. This time, I would be the one calling the shots, and Todd would soon learn the true cost of his deceit. Armed with the damning evidence gathered by Samantha, I felt a newfound determination coursing through my veins. It was time to confront Todd and his mistress head-on, to strip away the veil of lies that had shrouded our lives for far too long. With Jenna by my side for moral support, we made our way to the upscale apartment complex where Clarice resided. My heart pounded with a mixture of anger and trepidation as we approached the sleek glass doors, the weight of what I was about to do bearing down on me. "Are you sure about this, Marlene?" Jenna asked, her voice laced with concern. I took a deep breath, steadying my resolve. He needs to face the consequences of his actions. No more running, no more hiding. Jenna gave my hand a reassuring squeeze, and together we stepped inside. The ride up to Clarissa's floor was agonizingly slow, each passing second fueling the fire burning within me. When the elevator doors finally opened, I strode down the plush hallway with purpose, my heels clicking against the marble floor like a metronome counting down to the inevitable confrontation. I rapped sharply on the door, my knuckles stinging from the force of my blows. Moments later, it swung open, revealing a startled Clarisse clad in a silk robe, her perfectly coiffed hair mussed from what was undoubtedly a passionate tryst with my husband. "Marlene?" she gasped, her eyes widening in shock. "What are you doing here?" Before I could respond, Todd appeared behind her, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Marlene, this isn't what it looks like." "Save it," I spat, shoving past Clarisse and into the lavish apartment. "I know everything, the lies, the affairs, the money you've been funneling to support your little mistress here." Clarisse's mouth fell open in outrage. "How dare you barge in here and make accusations? Todd loves me and we're going to be together." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Is that what he told you? That he'd leave his wife and family for a pretty little thing like you?" Todd stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Marlene, please, let's discuss this like adults." "Oh, we're well past discussion," I snarled, reaching into my purse and retrieving the stack of evidence Samantha had provided. "I have proof of every sordid detail. The secret apartment, the lavish gifts, all paid for with money that should have gone to supporting our family." As I brandished the damning photos and receipts, Todd's face drained of color. Clarisse, too, appeared shaken, her confident facade crumbling as the truth laid bare. "You've been using me," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. Todd's gaze darted between us, his eyes pleading for understanding. "It's not like that, Clarisse. I never meant to hurt either of you." But his words fell on deaf ears. The betrayal ran too deep, the wounds too raw to be soothed by empty platitudes. "Save your lies for someone who still believes them," I spat, turning on my heel and storming towards the door. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." As I swept out of the apartment, Jenna hurrying to keep pace beside me, I felt a strange sense of liberation wash over me. The shackles of deceit had been broken, and for the first time in months I could breathe freely. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but I was ready to face it head-on. Todd's misdeeds had been laid bare, and now it was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. No more hiding, no more lies. The reckoning had begun. In the aftermath of my explosive confrontation with Todd and Clarisse, a sense of grim determination settled over me. I had laid bare the truth of his deceit, and now it was time to make him pay. Not just for the lies, but for every penny he had squandered on his sordid affairs. With Rachel, my formidable divorce lawyer, by my side, we set about meticulously documenting every financial betrayal, every hidden transaction that had drained our accounts over the years. The evidence was damning, a paper trail of excess and greed that left no room for doubt. As we prepared to file the divorce papers, Rachel turned to me, her steely gaze unwavering. "We're not just going after a settlement here, Marlene. We're going to bury him." Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I knew she was right. Todd's actions had gone far beyond the bounds of a simple infidelity. He had systematically looted our hard-earned savings, betraying the very foundation of trust upon which our marriage had been built. When the news of our impending divorce hit the headlines, the fallout was swift and merciless. Todd's once pristine reputation as a respected insurance agent lay in tatters, his clients fleeing in droves as the sordid details of his affairs came to light. How could we have trusted him with our policies when he couldn't even keep his own house in order? One former client lamented to the press. As Todd's professional life crumbled around him, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction watching him reap the consequences of his actions. No more hiding behind a facade of respectability. The world now knew him for the liar and cheat he truly was. But my revenge didn't stop there. With Rachel's guidance, I dug deeper into Todd's financial dealings, uncovering a tangled web of shady investments and ethical breaches that threatened to strip him of his insurance license altogether. "He's been playing fast and loose with client funds for years," Rachel revealed, her expression grim, "using their premiums to fund his lavish lifestyle and pay off his mistresses. The evidence was irrefutable, and before long, the governing board had no choice but to revoke Todd's license, effectively ending his career in disgrace. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, each court appearance became a public spectacle, with Todd's sordid misdeeds laid bare for all to see. I watched with a strange sense of detachment as he squirmed under the weight of his own lies, his once cocky demeanor replaced by a pathetic whimpering as he begged for leniency. But I was unmoved. He had made his bed, and now it was time for him to lie in it, alone, disgraced, and utterly ruined. In the end, the settlement was a mere formality. I had already taken back what was most precious, my dignity, my independence, and the knowledge that I had emerged from this ordeal a stronger, more resilient woman. As I watched Todd slink away from the courthouse, his head bowed in shame, I felt a strange sense of pity for the broken man he had become. But that pity was quickly overshadowed by a profound sense of relief. The nightmare was finally over, and I was free to start anew, unburdened by the weight of his betrayal. As the dust settled from the explosive divorce proceedings, I could scarcely recognize the man who had once been my husband. Todd's world had come crashing down around him, and the once cocky insurance agent was now a mere shadow of his former self. "This isn't over, Marlene," he snarled during one of our final court appearances, his eyes burning with a mixture of rage and desperation. "You haven't seen the last of me." But his threats rang hollow, a feeble attempt to cling to the illusion of power he had once wielded. The truth was laid bare. He was a disgraced shell of a man, his reputation in tatters, his finances in ruin. With each passing day, new revelations emerged, painting a picture of a man consumed by greed and deceit. It seemed that Clarice had been merely the tip of the iceberg, with evidence surfacing of multiple affairs spanning years, each mistress lavished with expensive gifts and exotic vacations funded by our hard-earned savings. He treated them like queens while I scraped by, pinching every penny, I confided to Jenna over coffee, my hands trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Jenna's expression hardened, her usual warmth replaced by a steely resolve. "He's going to pay for every single lie, Marlene. We'll make sure of it." True to her word, Jenna became my fiercest ally, standing by my side as we methodically dismantled every aspect of Todd's carefully constructed facade. With the help of Rachel and her team of investigators, we uncovered a tangled web of financial misdeeds that went far beyond simple infidelity. It seemed that Todd had been using client funds to bankroll his lavish lifestyle, siphoning off premiums and investment returns to fuel his insatiable appetite for excess. The evidence was damning, and before long, the governing bodies had no choice but to take action. "Mr. Wilkins, in light of the overwhelming evidence of ethical breaches and financial misconduct, we have no choice but to revoke your insurance license, effective immediately," the stern-faced judge declared, her gavel punctuating the finality of her words. As Todd slumped in his seat, his face ashen, I felt a strange sense of vindication wash over me. This was the true cost of his betrayal. Not just the loss of his marriage and family, but the complete and utter annihilation of everything he had worked for. In the weeks that followed, word of Todd's downfall spread like wildfire, his once respectable name becoming a byword for duplicity and greed. Former clients and colleagues turned their backs on him, their expressions a mix of disgust and pity for the man who had so thoroughly disgraced himself. I always knew there was something off about him. One former colleague remarked to the press, shaking his head in disbelief, but I never imagined the depths of his depravity. Through it all, Todd maintained a stoic silence, his once boisterous personality replaced by a sullen, withdrawn demeanor. It was as if the weight of his misdeeds had finally crushed him, leaving behind a hollow shell of a man. As for me, I found solace in the knowledge that justice had been served, that the man who had so callously betrayed me had finally reaped the consequences of his actions. It was a small victory, to be sure, but one that filled me with a newfound sense of strength and resolve. The road ahead might still be long and uncertain, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could see a glimmer of hope on the horizon, a chance to rebuild, to start anew, and to reclaim the life that had once been so cruelly stolen from me. The day my divorce from Todd was finally finalized, I expected to feel a sense of relief, a weight lifted from my shoulders. Instead, as I stood outside the courthouse, the crisp autumn breeze whipping through my hair, I was overcome by a strange mix of emotions: sadness, anger, and a profound sense of loss. This was the end of an era, the closing of a chapter in my life that had once held so much promise. The dreams Todd and I had shared, the future we had so carefully planned, all of it now reduced to a stack of legal documents and a judge's solemn pronouncement. "Are you okay?" Jenna's gentle voice broke through my reverie as she approached, her warm hand finding mine in a comforting embrace. I forced a smile, blinking back the tears that threatened to spill forth. "I'll be fine. It's just a lot to process." Jenna nodded in understanding, her own eyes shimmering with a mixture of sympathy and pride. "You've been through hell, Marlene, but you came out on the other side stronger than ever." Her words struck a chord within me, and I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The nights spent poring over financial records, the countless hours spent strategizing with Rachel, the confrontations with Todd and his mistresses. Each step had been a crucible, forging me into a woman I scarcely recognized. Gone was the naive, trusting wife who had so blindly followed the path laid out before her. In her place stood a woman tempered by the fires of betrayal, a warrior who had stared down the ugliest depths of human deceit and emerged victorious. As I looked back on the wreckage of my former life, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. The pain, the heartbreak, the rage, it had all been worth it, for it had revealed a strength within me that I never knew existed. "You're right, Jenna," I said, squeezing her hand in gratitude. "I am stronger now, and I have all of you to thank for that." A warm smile spread across her face, and in that moment I knew that no matter what lay ahead, I would never be alone. The bonds forged in the fires of this ordeal were unbreakable, a sisterhood born of shared struggle and unwavering support. In the days and weeks that followed, I found myself slowly but surely reclaiming the pieces of the life that had been shattered by Todd's betrayal. With the financial settlement secured, I was finally able to breathe freely, unburdened by the weight of his deceit. Bit by bit, I began to rebuild, exploring new interests and rekindling long-forgotten passions. The accounting firm I had once abandoned in pursuit of Todd's dreams welcomed me back with open arms, and I found myself relishing the familiar rhythm of crunching numbers and analyzing spreadsheets. But even as I immersed myself in work, a part of me yearned for something more. A connection. A chance to open my heart once again to the possibility of love and companionship. It was during a chance encounter at a local coffee shop that I met him. A kind-eyed stranger whose warm smile and easy laughter immediately put me at ease. As we fell into easy conversation, I found myself captivated by his gentle spirit and unwavering integrity, qualities that had been so sorely lacking in my previous relationship. Slowly, cautiously, I began to let my guard down, allowing myself to be vulnerable in a way I hadn't been in years. And though the road ahead was uncertain, I knew that this time I would walk it with my eyes wide open, my heart fortified by the lessons of the past. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could see a future unfurling before me, one filled with promise and possibility. The shadows of Todd's betrayal still lingered, but they no longer held the power to consume me. I was free at last to embrace the life I had so longed for, a life lived on my own terms, guided by the unwavering strength that had carried me through the darkest of times. And as I stepped forward into the unknown, I did so with a renewed sense of purpose, my head held high and my spirit unbroken.
Because my parents are coming over, you need to go back to your parents' house. When I got back from shopping, my husband Christopher said something outrageous with a mean smile on his face. Complaining about me wasn't something new, but I was genuinely taken aback by this sudden declaration to leave. Wait a minute, why are you bringing this up all of a sudden? Christopher ignored my words. He's always been like this when things get troublesome. He just keeps ignoring. I might have brushed off his usual complaints as nothing new, but being told to leave without even a reason, I couldn't just accept it. And his parents are coming over. I couldn't just ignore these words. If you don't explain properly, I won't understand what you mean. Glancing at me briefly with a look as if I'm a nuisance, He finally spoke. Mom wants to live here. That means you're in the way. Mom says she hates you. Here we go again, Mom. Even when discussing important matters, he brings up his mother. I was so tired of it. I felt like something inside me had crumbled with a noise. I understand, but don't regret this later. I, who contribute $160 every month to our living expenses, gave him a meaningful smile and turned my back on him. My name is Jennifer, and I'm 39 years old. On the surface, I'm a housewife. Our family consists of my husband Christopher, who is 2 years younger than me, our son Stephen, who is in the 11th grade, and our daughter Betty, who is in the 7th grade. Christopher is an ordinary office worker with not so high salary. Thinking about the future of our 2 children, I felt a bit anxious. Before married, I worked as a bank clerk, but I quit my job to follow the belief of my mother-in-law, Sarah, that a wife should stay at home after marriage. Thus, I wasn't allowed to take up a part-time job. Instead, I started a side business from home, which turned out to be more successful than I expected, now earning more than Christopher. But this fact is unknown to Christopher and Sarah. The only person who knows is my daughter, Betty, who gave me the idea when I was pondering what side business to do. Betty is very close to me and shares everything with me. It might be strange for a parent to say this, but she has a kind personality and is bright, well regarded by our neighbors. On the other hand, my son Stephen is taciturn, and it's hard to understand what he's thinking. He's not rebellious, so I just chalk it up to his age. The problem for me is my husband Christopher. Here, we got married through a mutual acquaintance, but it was more of Christopher taking a liking to me and pursuing me. Initially, I wasn't seeing anyone, nor had someone in mind. Since Christopher was earnest and serious, I accepted his proposal. However, once our 2 children were born, Christopher's attitude changed drastically. Childcare and housework are the wife's job. He used to help, albeit reluctantly, with housework and childcare, but stopped altogether after Sarah said yes. Christopher is someone who blindly believes in his mother, taking her word as absolute. And Sarah's words also showed she's a mother who can't let go of her only son. I realized this soon after getting married. The idea of paying rent for a property didn't sit well with Sarah, who questioned why pay for something that's not yours. Hence, Christopher had decided to live in a detached house upon marriage and had saved up for it. As a bank clerk, I had my savings too, and we combined our funds to build the house in cash. However, even though it was our house, Sarah interfered with everything from the kitchen design to the layout. Advice would have been acceptable, but for Christopher, Sarah's word was law. Eventually, the house turned out to be far from what I had envisioned. Still, I thought at least we're not living together. That's something to be grateful for. That was how naively I thought back then. Sarah continued to meddle in our marriage, trying to instill her version of what a wife should be into me. Well, Jennifer, what's this way of folding clothes? I've always done it this way. Well, where exactly did you clean in this manner, showing displeasure at everything I do? I really should have chosen Christopher's wife for him. She soon started saying things like, whenever I talked to Christopher about it, "Isn't Mom a wonderful woman, Jennifer? You should learn from Mom and become a wife worthy of me." It would turn into a brag about his mother, but I thought things would change once we had children. I harbored this naive thought again when I was pregnant with Stephen. After the stable period, you need to develop a strong pelvis for childbirth. She would come from her home every day, making me carry heavy things even on days when I was suffering from severe morning sickness. Saying this just shows how lazy you've become, and forcing me to do household chores, not allowing me to rest. Once Stephen was safely born, I'll praise you for giving birth to a boy. She was pleased about that, at least. Seeing Sarah's behavior, Christopher was cooperative with childcare at that time. And with our second child, Betty, Sarah's attitude remained terrible. I went through the days of morning sickness without proper rest until I gave birth. I really wanted to go back to my parents' home with Stephen for the birth. But who's going to take care of Christopher if not his wife? She yelled, and my wish didn't come true. Moreover, when she found out the second child was a girl will just grow up, get married, and leave. Maybe Jennifer really isn't suited to be Christopher's wife. How can you say that? This child is also a precious life we've been blessed with. Well, only your back talk is impressive. Listen, childcare and housework are the wife's duties. It's obvious. But taking care of Christopher comes first. You can't even think about slacking off, Sarah. I'm not thinking about slacking off, but childcare is difficult by myself. I need Christopher's help too. Making Christopher help? Christopher is working hard for your family, isn't he? By asking such a thing, Jennifer, you're a devil. That was what she would say. Exhausted, not by childcare, but by Sarah's unreasonable behavior, I decided to talk to Christopher. Is that so? Mom said such things. I'm sorry, Jennifer. I didn't notice Christopher. You understand, right? All right. In that case, I won't do any child care or housework from tomorrow. Make sure to take good care of me, too. At Christopher's words, I was momentarily pleased that my husband seemed to understand, only to feel angry at myself for that thought. I was devastated by my husband's defiant attitude, to the point of not finding words to respond. True to his word, Christopher stopped doing not just child care, but even his own personal care. As the children grew, he became more neglectful of the family. Even though he worked in a department with no overtime, he lied about working late, thinking I didn't know, and started coming home later. When asked about meals, he would say he ate at his parents', and this continued for days. All these were things Christopher did willingly following Sarah's words. Yet Sarah lamented, "It's your fault for not being able to create a home he wants to return to." Following that, Sarah's attitude worsened, and so did my husband's. From then on, Sarah's behavior became even worse. At the same time, Yitsun's behavior also worsened. What's this meal? I thought I'd eat at home for a change and come back early, only to be served this disgusting food. This is why Mom hates you. Christopher would say such things in front of the children without hesitation. The only reason he sometimes came home was because Sarah was away on a trip. I knew the reason, but held back my words because of the children. Maybe Dad just doesn't understand the taste of Mom's cooking. My daughter Betty spoke up for me. What did you say to your father? It's because of how you're raised that you turn out like this. Don't speak badly of Mom, Stephen. Say something. Thank you for the meal, Stephen. Maybe Stephen is the smarter one, Betty. Thank you. I'm okay. I'm sorry for making you feel uncomfortable, Mom. Looks like I'm the one making everyone miserable here, doesn't it? All of you. The family meal times turn awkward just like that. Furthermore, Christopher, who originally had a strange sense of money, doesn't even know how much he earns a month. On top of that, he's high in pride, thinking he's a capable man. From who knows where, he believes he's valued at his company, and thinks that he's covering all our living expenses with his earnings and even saving a significant amount. In reality, the income is barely enough for the four of us, including the expenses for our 2 children. If I hadn't been earning from my side job, we would have had to sell this large house to survive. Yet, Christopher seems to be spending his salary limitlessly. One day, as I was troubled by doubts about our life with Christopher, Betty ran to me as soon as she got back from school. "Mom, oh, welcome back, Betty. What's wrong? You look so upset." "Dad said he was going on a business trip for 3 days, right?" "Yes, he did. He left saying that this morning. What about it?" Betty looked uneasy answering my question. I knew Christopher's company doesn't have overtime, nor does his department have overnight business trips. I thought he must be staying at his parents' house. I was about to tell Betty that, but the words that came out of Betty's mouth were unbelievable. "Mom, please calm down and listen. Emily saw Dad walking with his suitcase a while ago." Emily, as Betty mentions, is her best friend. A girl who has come to our house many times and knows Christopher well. Emily saw him. That's strange since he left in the morning. It's not just that. She saw him walking arm in arm with a woman who appeared older than Dad, cheating. Then I somehow didn't find it entirely unbelievable, so I wasn't as shocked at that moment. That woman might be Grandma. "What? What did you just say?" I was about to continue, but caught my breath. I shouldn't let my daughter speak anymore, driven by that feeling. That's when Stephen came back. "I'm home. Dad is—" "Betty, thank you. It's okay. I'll ask Dad when he comes back. Sorry for making you worry, Mom. I'm sorry. I didn't want to upset you." Betty, about to cry, hugged me tightly, and I felt so dear. I'm going to my part-time job. Even in such an atmosphere, Stephen's words were at his own pace. I knew something had to change. That thought spurred me on. Then, finally, that time came one holiday when I returned from shopping. Christopher, who had been watching TV in the living room, sensed my presence, turned around and stood up. Then he said, laughing, "My parents are coming over, so you should go back to your parents' house." I was taken aback by the sudden demand to leave. Wait a minute. Why are you suddenly bringing this up? I might have ignored it if it were just his usual complaints, but being told to leave without any explanation was not something I could accept, especially since we both paid half for this house without any discussion of inviting his parents. I can't understand without a proper explanation if you're asking me to leave, glancing at me with a side eye as if I were a nuisance. He opened his mouth. "Mom wanted to live here. That makes you a bother. Mom hates you, that's why." Here we go again, Mom. Even when trying to discuss something important, he brings up his mother. I was fed up. Something inside me felt like it was collapsing. "Fine, but don't regret this. I'm paying $160 a month for living expenses." I turned my back to my husband with a meaningful smile. "Regret? Don't worry, I won't. Oh, and take the kids with you." Hearing Christopher's voice behind me, anger welled up, and I clenched my fist. Leaving the living room, I went to Betty's room and called out to Stephen. "I want us to leave here and go stay with the other grandma in the next room." Of course, divorce was the underlying assumption, but without telling the kids that. "Would you mind keeping me company for a bit of a break?" I simply asked. I planned to explain everything later and let them choose whom they wanted to stay with. Betty seemed to understand how I was feeling, nodded silently, and began packing essentials. Stephen, without saying anything, looked straight at me, gave a small nod, and went back to his room. And so we, the parent and children, decided to leave the house. I contacted the garbage collection service and had all the furniture and appliances disposed of. Luckily, I had informed my parents that this might happen a while ago, so they were ready to take us in immediately. My parents' home was in a distant place, and both my father and mother were very happy to see their grandchildren after a long time. Moreover, it was the beginning of the summer vacation for both children, so we had time to think about the future and discuss it. However, it might be unfortunate for the children, but they might have to transfer schools. That was the only thing that made me feel guilty for dragging them into this situation due to parental circumstances. The next day, after returning to my parents' house, Betty made a proposal. "Mom, no matter what happens, I'm on your side, okay?" "Betty, thank you. I'll do my best," I replied. Then Stephen came in, sat down in front of me, and handed over an envelope. "What's this?" Inside were several photographs. Seeing them, I involuntarily widened my eyes and covered my mouth with my hand. I thought they might serve as evidence. "I'm on your side too, Mom. That guy never did anything father-like. I never thought of him as a father." Stephen, I was moved by Stephen's words and found myself at a loss for words seeing me like that. Stephen continued, "I've been thinking. I want to go to a university with a law school to help you, Mom. A friend's brother is a lawyer, and he's let me do some part-time work as a phone operator and errand boy," he said. "He could help you." I was deeply moved to realize how much my usually quiet son had thought about this. I thought they were still children, but both had grown up to be such good kids. I decided to consult with the lawyer's office where Stephen's friend's brother worked. First, I needed to sort out the situation around my husband, Christopher. He had told me to leave because he was inviting his parents over without consulting me. He mentioned his parents, but I knew that my father-in-law was working away from home and hardly ever at the house. Then my thoughts drifted to something I didn't want to consider. Betty's friend had seen Christopher and a woman, presumably Sarah, walking arm in arm. He had left the house early in the morning, claiming he was on a business trip, but I knew Christopher's department didn't have overnight business trips. The clincher was the photos in the envelope Stephen had brought. It seemed a lawyer had investigated, and the photos captured Christopher and Sarah entering a dubious hotel. In fact, Sarah was not Christopher's real mother. I had heard this from Christopher a long time ago. His real mother had died when he was in middle school, and he had spoken happily about how Sarah, not related by blood, had loved him. The thought of Christopher and Sarah together was disturbing, but at this point, I no longer cared what they did. However, I couldn't let this betrayal go unpunished. I didn't want money, but they had also betrayed the children. I decided to at least seek compensation as a form of reparation. With these thoughts, I proceeded to prepare with the lawyer. It was about 2 weeks since I had left Christopher. My mobile phone rang annoyingly loud. It was Christopher, the very person about to face retribution. "Hello? What the hell is going on?" Christopher's voice screamed into my ear. I responded with complete calm. "It's been a while. How about starting with a greeting?" "What do you mean by what's going on?" "Don't play dumb. You took money from my bank account. Give it back." "That's impossible." It couldn't be. After all, Christopher's bank account only had his monthly salary deposit into it, with no savings to speak of. No one else could mess with my money. "I'm not sure how much, but I'll forgive you if you return it now. Hurry up and transfer the full amount." His uncertainty about how much was in his own savings somehow impressed me in a strange way. "Look, your debit card has always been with you. How am I supposed to withdraw from it?" "Well, there's always a way. Just hurry up and transfer the money." It dawned on me anew how ignorant this person is. Are you serious? It's not that easy to just withdraw money, and I haven't even looked at your bank account long before I left. What then? How have you been living up until now? My earnings allowed you to be a housewife. I'm speechless. Perhaps this is exactly what they mean. Did you ever give me a salary? What did you say? Sorry, but your meager earnings were not enough for a family of 4 to live on. I was struggling not to laugh. Then, how did you... Let me clarify. I was freelancing. It's odd to say freelancing as a housewife, but I was earning a bit on the side at home without you knowing. I was successful, earning more than you. I was the one paying the $160 monthly living expenses. So, I told you, didn't I? I don't regret it. I could hear Christopher gasping at that. Wait, that's not all. What about the furniture and appliances in the house? Now you ask after 2 weeks. I'm astounded. Turns out, after we left and he didn't return from a fake business trip, staying at his parents' house instead, Sarah had been preparing to move into our house by staying over. When he finally did move, he found all the household items gone, and when he went to withdraw money, not a cent was left, prompting him to contact me in a panic. If I bought the appliances, I had them collected as trash. You wouldn't want to live with Sarah with items who Sarah hates, had bought in the room, would you? I said meaningfully. And to think, the only things left in the house were the bag and clothes you brought from your parents' house. That just shows you've done nothing for us. Rather, you betrayed us and our children in an unfathomable way. Betrayed? What are you talking about? His panic was evident. As if you don't know. Your affair with Sarah. His panic was evident. No, I will punish you. A lawyer will be visiting you, so don't run away, I declared. Christopher flailed, claiming there was no evidence. But I informed him that everything was in order, and he fell silent. There was more to Christopher's story. According to the lawyer, he thought by kicking us out, he could move Sarah and his father-in-law's stuff in, living effectively with just the two of them, selling the old family home and enjoying trips with Sarah with that money. Christopher, who never had a sense of money, even secretly got a credit card and spoiled Sarah with brand bags. I never received such gifts during our marriage, and so Christopher ended up in debt. The divorce, prompted by the discovery of his affair with his biological mother, went smoothly. Of course, his father-in-law found out, leading to a major conflict. Meanwhile, he called me with a pathetic voice. Please, I was wrong. Mom said she'll take you back and support you. Such a call made no sense at all. When he persistently tried to contact me, despite my request to go through a lawyer, I threatened to call the police and he fell silent. In the end, Christopher was buried in debt from credit cards, compensation claims I made, compensation from his father-in-law, and alimony claims Sarah made after the divorce. The company's finances continued to swell, and they ended up with huge debts. Somehow, the news of his affair with his biological mother and his family leaving him spread to his company, leading to his dismissal. Now, Christopher is juggling part-time jobs in construction, working tirelessly. Eventually, Sarah disappeared after rumors of her affair with her biological son spread among her friends and acquaintances. Yes, indeed, it was all a result of his own doing. I'm grateful we divorced before being burdened with debt. Thanks to Stephen's quick thinking. As for us, my successful side business allowed us to rebuild our home into a duplex, living a peaceful life with my parents on the first floor and myself, Stephen, who's studying law, and Betty, who's pursuing a career in childcare on the second floor. After separating from Christopher, Stephen began to smile more and became more communicative with me. My daughter Betty tells me, "You can remarry if you want, but I've had enough of men." I choose to see this as a valuable social lesson. Having my children and parents who care and cherish me is enough. As long as I have Stephen and Betty, who care about me as much as my parents do, that's fine. Watching my children grow is my greatest happiness.
You will hand over the new house to my parents, or else we're done, Angie? Tom's words hit me like a ton of bricks. Standing in our small rented house, I could hardly believe what I was hearing. The previous night of restless sleep and crying twins made me rub my tired eyes. You think you can bully me into submission? Think again. I snapped, voice shaking with anger as I held Sophie in one arm and steadied Ethan in his high chair. I'm trying to save this family from your selfishness, Tom said, stepping closer, his face flushed. The tension was thick. I remembered the day Sarah, my sister, died in that car crash, leaving her 2 babies to me. And now, raising them with Tom was turning into a nightmare. I looked at him, the younger man I once adored, now a stranger demanding impossible sacrifices. Selfishness? I work every day to make sure these babies have a home and a future, I retorted, my heart pounding in my chest. Tom sneered. And yet you think buying that new house was a good idea, all while we're stuck in this dump. The twins whimpered, sensing the hostility. I softened, trying to mask my despair for their sake. Because it was supposed to be our way out, Tom, for Sophie and Ethan to provide them space to grow, not for your parents. He crossed his arms. They helped us with the down payment. That house wouldn't even exist if it weren't for them. I exhaled deeply, trying to connect to some sense of calm. This was a man who had once held me tenderly, who had promised to be a father to my sister's children. You know that's not true, I said, leveling my gaze. I sold my car and worked overtime for that money. Your parents just tagged along. There was a brief silence, broken only by Ethan babbling. It took me back to nights where Sarah and I shared our dreams, the sisterly bond now replaced by this insidious daily strife. Tom glanced at the clock, irritation creasing his brow. I'm late for work. We'll talk about this later. As he grabbed his coat and stomped out, slamming the door behind him, I sank into a chair, holding Sophie close. The sudden tragedy that brought these twins under my wing had stripped life of its former simplicity. Sarah's laughter, her plans for the future with her kids now seemed like distant echoes. Mama, Mama, little Sophie mumbled, tugging at my shirt. I forced a smile. Yes, sweetheart, I'm here. It was hard to mask the brewing storm inside. The day Tom and I met, he was a breath of fresh air, a promise of support in raising Sarah's twins. But now, his demands and his parents' overbearing nature threatened the fragile life we were building. Briefly, I thought back to Sarah, her vibrant energy and unyielding spirit. She wouldn't have let anyone overshadow her dreams. I could almost hear her encouraging me to stay strong. But confronting Tom meant facing a war on multiple fronts, his domineering parents, and perhaps the love that was supposed to bind us. I sighed, cradling Ethan, who was dozing off. We'll figure this out, my loves, I whispered to the twins. I won't let anyone take away what belongs to us. As I started preparing breakfast, chopping vegetables with determined strokes, I knew this battle was far from over. Tom's words echoed in my mind, but they fueled a fire within me. For Sophie and Ethan, I had to stand my ground, no matter the cost. Tom's footsteps echoed outside as I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. I tried to push our argument away, focusing on the day ahead. Raising twins in this cramped space was a daily challenge, but I kept my hope alive with the thought of our new house. The door creaked open, and Tom's parents, Helen and Richard, walked in unannounced. Helen's eyes scanned the living room judgmentally as she set her purse down. Why waste time keeping this place tidy, Angela? She asked, her tone sweet but condescending. I forced a smile. Good morning, Helen. Richard, can I help you with something? Helen ignored my question and picked up Ethan, who was playing with a toy on the floor. You can't handle this alone, Angie. You need help, real help. Richard nodded in agreement, his face stern. Tom said you're still against moving into our house. Because we need our own space, I replied, trying to keep my tone civil. It's important for Sophie and Ethan to have stability. Helen scoffed. Stability? In this dump? We have a large house with plenty of space. Plus, we know how to raise children. Isn't that right, Richard? Absolutely, Richard said. Plus, this isn't about you. It's about the children needing a proper home. I sighed, holding Sophie close. I appreciate your offer, but we need to make our own decisions. This situation is temporary. We'll move into the new house once it's ready. Helen's smile vanished. That house should be ours. You're being stubborn and selfish, Angela. The insult stung, but I held my ground. I will do what's best for Sophie and Ethan. If Tom thinks your house is better, that's something we need to discuss. Helen's face hardened. Discuss it with Tom? You mean let him order you around? Follow his lead or risk your family falling apart? Is that what you want? I want what's best for the twins, I replied, feeling my voice waver slightly. We need to maintain our family unit, not break it apart under pressure. Helen and Richard exchanged glances. They weren't used to resistance. We'll see about that, Richard murmured as they gathered their things and marched out. The door closed, leaving a heavy silence. Later that evening, Tom sat at the kitchen table, looking more worn out than usual. I placed a plate of reheated lasagna in front of him. We ate in silence until I finally spoke. Your parents came by this morning. They want us to move in with them again. Tom put down his fork and sighed. It would solve a lot of our problems, Angie. We can't keep living like this. Moving in with them will create more problems, I said firmly. We need to focus on creating a stable environment for our children in our new house. I won't let your parents dictate our lives. Tom's eyes darkened with frustration. You don't understand. This isn't just about you. It's about making sacrifices for family. I have made sacrifices, I snapped. You think I took this all on for myself? I lost my sister. I'm raising her kids. I won't lose myself to your parents' control. He stood up abruptly, glaring at me. Then you're the one tearing this family apart. Your stubbornness will be our downfall. Fighting back tears, I took Sophie and Ethan to their room, leaving him alone with his anger. As I rocked the twins to sleep, I knew I had to stay strong. This was our fight, not just mine. For their sake, I had to make sure we built a future on our terms, not dictated by Tom's parents. Moving into Tom's parents' house felt like stepping into an unending nightmare. Boxes still unpacked, I carried Sophie into the living room, following Helen's terse instructions. Put her down there, Angie, Helen ordered, pointing to a spot on the rug. My way's better for the children, you'll see. I nodded, masking my reluctance. Richard barged in, a cigarette dangling from his lips. The sharp smell made me wince. Could we keep the smoking outside, please? It's harmful for the babies, I asked, trying to sound polite but firm. Richard glared at me. My house, my rules. Get used to it or get out. Helpless anger welled up inside me, but I stayed silent. I couldn't risk escalating things further. Instead, I stepped outside to catch my breath, looking out into the vast, manicured lawn that now felt more like a prison yard. Tom found me there, phone in hand, scrolling through messages. He looked up briefly. Everything okay? No, Tom? It's not okay, I replied, keeping my voice low. Your dad's smoking inside. It's bad for the kids. He shrugged, barely meeting my eyes. You know how he is. Just let it go. Let it go? These are our children, Tom, I shouted, unable to contain my frustration. He sighed. You need to adapt, Angie. They're offering us a home and support. Stop making everything so difficult. Stop making it. I stopped myself, took a deep breath, and just walked away. Inside, Helen had taken over the kitchen, barking orders at me while cooking a complicated dinner. Chop those vegetables. Faster, Angie. I bit my tongue and focused on the carrots, feeling her eyes bore into me. Sophie and Ethan, seated in high chairs, seemed more fussy than usual, probably picking up on the turmoil around them. After dinner, Helen cornered me in the hallway. You need to understand that you're under our roof now. You better pull your weight. Do you think I'm not contributing? I asked, trying to keep the venom out of my voice. Raising 2 children, maintaining a job as a graphic designer, that's not enough? Helen's face twisted in anger. You're disrespectful and ungrateful. Tom deserves better. As she walked away, my hands trembled from restrained rage. There were no allies here, no sanctuary. I was a prisoner behind every smiling face and condescending remark. That night, I found Tom in our room, lying on the bed with his eyes closed. We need to talk, I said, shutting the door behind me. He sat up slowly. About what now? This situation. It's intolerable, I said, voice cracking. Your parents overstep every boundary. We need to leave. Tom frowned. Leave? To where? You know we can't afford another place right now. We have the new house, I reminded him, heart pounding. He shook his head. Not without my parents' help, and you're the one who drove them away. My patience snapped. No, Tom. You've allowed this to happen. You've let them control every aspect of our lives. This isn't what we signed up for. He stood, towering over me. Maybe you're not cut out for this family, Angie. A tear escaped my eye, but I wiped it away quickly. I guess we'll see about that. The following days were a blur of tension and unease. Helen's constant criticisms, Richard's smoking, Tom's indifference, it all built up like pressure in a boiling pot. I knew I couldn't allow this toxic environment to poison Sophie and Ethan's upbringing. Every moment in this house strengthened my resolve. I had to find a way to break free, no matter the cost. Every day felt like a test of endurance. Juggling house chores dictated by Helen, dealing with Richard's constant indoor smoking, and facing Tom's growing apathy drained every bit of strength. My desire to fight back strengthened as the days dragged on. One evening, after a particularly rough day at work, I noticed the familiar scent of cigarette smoke as soon as I walked in. Richard was in his usual chair, puffing away like a king on his throne. Unable to take it anymore, I approached him. Richard, your smoking is harming the kids, I said, trying to stay calm. Please, no smoking inside. Richard's eyes narrowed as he blew out a cloud of smoke. This is my house, Angela. You don't like it, leave. I clenched my fists, anger bubbling up, but I held back, knowing a direct confrontation wouldn't help. Later that night, Tom walked in, looking more exhausted than usual. We need to talk, I began, voice low but firm. He placed his briefcase on the table. Go ahead. This can't go on. Your parents control everything, and it's hurting Sophie, Ethan, and me, I said, barely keeping my frustration in check. Tom sighed, rubbing his temples. You always make it sound so dramatic, Angie. They're just trying to help. Help by suffocating any sense of independence we have, by disregarding our children's health. My voice rose despite my attempts to stay calm. Tom stood up straight, eyes cold. You're overreacting again. Maybe you just can't handle being part of a real family. Is this what you call a real family? Because it feels like a prison, I retorted, my voice breaking. He stared at me, a mixture of frustration and disappointment. If you can't accept how things are, maybe you should leave. I couldn't believe my ears. Forcing me out instead of standing up for us? For our kids? Tom's silence was all the answer I needed. Realizing I had to take control, I turned and walked out of the room, my heart heavy but my resolve hardening. The next few days were filled with increasing tension. Helen's micromanagement, Richard's smoking, and Tom's indifference became unbearable. One evening, after Helen criticized the way I bathed Sophie, I reached my breaking point. Tom was in the living room, scrolling through his phone. I marched over. You're letting your parents run our lives. This isn't what I signed up for, I yelled, feeling my control slip. Tom looked up, clearly annoyed. Maybe you're not cut out for this family, Angie. For a moment, all I could do was stare at him, stunned. You're right, I whispered finally. I need to be somewhere I can be strong for Sophie and Ethan, and this isn't it. Packing a few bags quickly, I took the twins and headed for the door. Helen and Richard watched, whispering and smirking as I passed. Tom didn't even try to stop me. Back in our old rented house, I sat in the empty living room, feeling a mixture of despair and relief. I was breaking free from the suffocating grip of Tom's family. It was time to reclaim my life and protect my children from the toxic influences that almost tore us apart. Tomorrow, I would file for divorce. As I tucked Sophie and Ethan into their cribs, I kissed their foreheads softly. We're going to be okay, I whispered. Mama's going to make sure of it. With a deep breath, I looked around the empty room. It felt like home again. For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were starting over. And this time, no one would take that from us. The next morning, the quiet of the empty house was almost unbearable. Sophie and Ethan were asleep, allowing me a rare moment of peace. Sitting at the kitchen table, I dialed Tom's number, bracing myself for the inevitable showdown. Angie, he answered, his voice thick with annoyance. Tom, you need to know, I started, my voice shaking. I'm filing for divorce, and I want the house back. There was a bitter laugh on the other end, one that didn't surprise me. Good luck with that, Angie. I already sold the house. It's gone. His words felt like a punch to the gut. What did you do? I whispered, stunned. I used the money for us, he said flatly, as if it was the most reasonable thing in the world. For our family, Angie. Too bad you can't see it. Rage swept over me, but I forced myself to stay calm. You had no right. Return that money now. It's too late, Tom replied coldly. You walked away. This is the consequence. I hung up, my hands trembling. Filing for divorce wasn't just an option anymore. It was a necessity. Later that day, I met with Mike, my lawyer, in his downtown office. He was a tall man with a commanding presence, someone you wanted on your side. He listened intently as I outlined everything. You have a strong case, Angie, he said, jotting down notes. Start by documenting everything. We'll also file for an emergency hearing to get the house situation sorted. Thank you, Mike, I said, feeling a glimmer of hope. Back in my car, I took a deep breath. There was no time to waste. I called Tom's parents, knowing it would be another battle. Helen picked up, her voice immediately grating on my nerves. Helen, I need to talk to Tom. He sold the house, and I need to know where the money is. He did what's best for the family, Angela, she snapped. Stop being ungrateful and accept reality. My reality is ensuring my children have what they need, I said firmly. Tell Tom this isn't over. I hung up before she could respond. The next few days were a blur of paperwork and legal meetings, each step making the fight for my children and our future more real. Mike worked tirelessly, and slowly, progress was made. One evening, as I tried to unwind with a cup of tea, my phone rang. It was Tom. You've destroyed any chance at reconciliation, he spat. Why do you hate me so much? I don't hate you, I responded, keeping my voice steady. I do hate what you've become. This is about the twins. They deserve stability and safety. You're making a mistake, he growled. You're going to regret this. Maybe, I said softly, but not as much as if I stayed. After hanging up, I felt an odd sense of relief. This war had many fronts, but I was prepared to fight every one of them. No one would take away what we deserved, not Tom, nor his parents. As I tucked Sophie and Ethan into bed that night, I kissed their little foreheads and whispered, We're going to make it, I promise. Watching them sleep peacefully, I knew this path was the right one. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room. The fight wasn't over, but I was ready for whatever came next. For the sake of my children, I'd stop at nothing. My days became a whirlwind of legal documents and court proceedings. Mike was a constant presence, offering advice and support as we battled for custody and the return of the house money. One afternoon, Mike called with news. Angie, we've got the hearing scheduled. Be prepared for a tough fight, but we have strong evidence. Thanks, Mike. I'll be ready, I said, feeling the weight of everything suddenly pressing down on me. In the weeks leading up to the hearing, I poured my heart into writing a graphic memoir about my ordeal. Using my skills as a graphic designer, I crafted detailed illustrations and poignant stories that captured the manipulation and abuse I had endured from Tom and his parents. It was therapeutic, turning my pain into purpose. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was daunting, but I held my head high, clutching a folder of documents that detailed every instance of Tom's neglect and his parents' overreach. Tom and his parents sat on one side, glaring at me with cold eyes. Helen's smug expression almost broke my resolve, but I stayed focused. Mike stood next to me, a pillar of assurance. The judge listened as Mike presented our case, laying out the evidence systematically. Emails, text messages, financial records, everything was there, painting a clear picture of Tom's betrayal and his parents' tyranny. When it was Tom's turn, his lawyer tried to twist the narrative, painting me as unstable and uncooperative. Helen even testified, her voice dripping with false sincerity as she talked about how much they tried to help me. Help? By undermining every decision I made for my children? I couldn't keep quiet any longer. The judge allowed me to speak, and I detailed the constant invasions, the harassment, the lack of support. Tom stood up, his face reddening with anger. Nothing I did was ever good enough for you, Angie. You pushed me to this. You chose this path, Tom, I replied calmly. You chose to betray the trust we had, the family we tried to build. The judge called for a recess, and I stepped outside for some air. Mike joined me, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You're doing great. Stick to the facts, and we'll get through this. Back in the courtroom, the judge reviewed all the evidence and testimonies. Finally, she delivered her decision. Tom had to return part of the money from the house sale, and I was granted primary custody of Sophie and Ethan. Tom's face twisted with rage. "You've destroyed any chance at reconciliation. Why do you hate me?" Facing him, I took a deep breath. "I don't hate you, Tom. I hate the man you became. It's time you face the consequences." His parents looked furious, but I felt a sense of relief wash over me. This battle was over, but the war wasn't. Outside the courtroom, Mike gave me a firm handshake. "You did it, Angie," he said, smiling. "It's not just me. It's for Sophie and Ethan, too," I replied. Returning home that evening, I felt lighter, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I picked up my graphic memoir and contacted a few colleagues in the publishing industry. My story needed to be told, not just for me, but for anyone who found themselves trapped in a similar situation. In the following weeks, word spread about my memoir. Calls and emails poured in, and soon I had a meeting scheduled with a prominent publisher. As I prepared to share my story with the world, I knew this was just the beginning of reclaiming my strength and independence. I looked at Sophie and Ethan, laughing in their playroom. "We're going to be okay," I whispered, the future looking a little brighter every day. A week after the court ruling, Tom called and asked to meet me at a local park. Reluctantly, I agreed, leaving Sophie and Ethan with my neighbor. The park was quiet, with only the sound of children playing in the distance. Tom was already there, pacing restlessly under a large oak tree. He didn't waste time. "We need to talk, Angie." "I'm listening," I replied, crossing my arms defensively. "Look, Angie," he started, running a hand through his hair. "Can't we find a way to make this work, for the sake of the twins?" "Make what work, Tom? You've already sold the house and betrayed my trust. This isn't about us anymore. It's about doing what's best for Sophie and Ethan," I said, my voice steady. He sighed, a mix of frustration and desperation in his eyes. "I know I messed up, okay? But I can't lose them. We need to come to some agreement." I shook my head, feeling the old pang of pain mixed with the strength I had gained. "You should have thought about that before siding with your parents against us." Tom took a step closer, his voice softening. "I'm sorry, Angie. Please, let's fix this." I stood firm. "Words aren't enough, Tom. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." The desperation in his eyes turned to anger. "Even if that means tearing this family apart, you're really going to do this?" "I'm doing this for the twins and for myself," I said firmly. "I won't live in a toxic environment because of your decisions." Tom's shoulders slumped. "You can't mean this. Think of the twins." "I am thinking of them. That's why I'm ending this now," I said, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. Realizing there was no changing my mind, Tom nodded slowly. "Okay, Angie, you win." It didn't feel like winning. It felt necessary. Watching him walk away, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. This chapter of my life was closing, but it was necessary for the well-being of my children and myself. Back at home, I finalized the divorce papers, feeling a sense of closure with each signature. The following weeks flew by in a blur of legalities and preparing for our new life. I found a cozy house in a supportive community, a place where we could truly start fresh. The moving day came quickly. As I unpacked boxes in our new home, Sophie and Ethan played in the garden, their laughter echoing through the warm afternoon air. This was a place of peace, a stark contrast to the oppressive environment we had left behind. One evening, as I watched the twins sleep in their new room, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and resolve. My memoir was gaining attention, leading to public appearances and a resurgence in my career. Standing on stage at a book launch event, I shared my story openly. "This is for anyone who's ever felt trapped, who thinks they can't find a way out," I said, my voice clear and strong. "You can break free. You can rebuild." After my speech, an audience member approached me. "Your story is inspiring. Thank you for sharing it." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely touched. "It means a lot." Returning home from the event, I found Sophie and Ethan waiting for me. Their bright smiles were the reminder of why I had fought so hard. I knelt down, hugging them tightly. "We're going to be okay," I whispered. "This is our forever home, where we're safe and loved." Looking out at the twins playing in the garden, I smiled. The journey was hard, but we had emerged stronger. The future was bright, and together we would build a life filled with love, respect, and resilience. Life had a new rhythm. Waking up to the sound of Sophie and Ethan giggling, working on my graphic designs, and enjoying the safety of our new home. The air was lighter, filled with possibilities rather than dread. My memoir was officially published, and the response was overwhelming. Emails from other survivors of toxic relationships poured in, offering gratitude and sharing their stories. It was empowering, not just for me, but for everyone who felt seen and heard. One sunny afternoon as I was preparing lunch, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Helen standing there, her face a mask of thinly veiled contempt. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "I need to talk to you, Angela," she said, pushing her way inside without waiting for an invitation. Watching Sophie and Ethan playing nearby, I motioned for them to go to their room. "What is it?" "Tom's falling apart," she started, eyes narrowing. "He's lost his job, and it's because of you. You've ruined everything." "I've ruined everything?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. It was his choices that led to this. I'm finally rebuilding my life, and I'm not going back. She took a deep breath, trying to regain composure. "You need to speak to him. He wants to see the kids. No, not until he proves that he's changed and that he respects the boundaries set by the court." "You're a selfish woman, Angela," Helen hissed. "You always have been. You think you're better than us?" "It's not about being better. It's about protecting my children," I replied, feeling the anger simmer just below the surface. As she left, slamming the door behind her, I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the encounter. My phone buzzed with a message from Mike, "Meeting with publisher next week. They're excited." A smile crept across my face. Despite Helen's venom, life was slowly piecing itself back together. The following week, I walked into the publisher's office, a sleek downtown building buzzing with creativity. The meeting went exceptionally well, and they offered me a contract for my next book. My story wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning. Returning home, I found Sophie and Ethan waiting for me at the door, their faces lighting up with joy. "Mommy's home." I scooped them up, their joy infectious. "Yes, I'm home. And guess what? We're going to celebrate tonight." We had a small party in the living room, just the three of us, eating pizza and dancing to silly tunes. It felt perfect. Simple, happy, full of love. Before tucking the twins into bed, I sat down with them. "You know, everything I do it for you two. To keep you safe and happy." "Love you, Mama," Sophie murmured, her eyes heavy with sleep. Ethan gave a sleepy nod. "I love you both so much," I whispered, kissing their foreheads. Sitting on the porch later, the cool night air wrapped around me like a comforting embrace. Tom and his parents had tried to break us, but in doing so, they had only made us stronger. The journey had been rough, but every step led us here, to a place where we could breathe, dream, and live freely. I looked out at the darkening sky, feeling a profound sense of peace. Our story was far from over. It was just beginning, and for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to every chapter. Together, Sophie, Ethan, and I would write our own story, filled with love, resilience, and the unshakable belief in our right to live life on our terms.